The fluorescent lights of the courthouse flickered above me, casting a sterile glow on the marble floors. My hands were clammy, gripping the stack of documents I'd come to file. That's when I heard the voice that had haunted my nightmares, a voice dripping with disdain. "Isn't that Meredith? Still playing the role of the struggling single mom, I see." Derek's words cut through the air, his smirk visible even from a distance. Clara, his new wife, stood beside him, her makeup perfect, her laugh a tinkling bell that grated on my nerves. "Oh, Derek, you're too kind. Struggling? She looks downright pitiful." Their laughter echoed off the walls, a sound so familiar yet so foreign now. I turned to face them, my heart pounding, but my voice steady. "Struggling? Hardly. I've moved past that thanks to the divorce." Derek's smirk faltered, but Clara stepped in, her voice sharp. "Please, with what? Your little cooking hobby? Don't make me laugh." "It's sad, really." I smiled, the kind of smile that didn't reach my eyes. "That little hobby of mine? It earns me $70,000, monthly." The silence that followed was delicious. Derek's face went through several shades of red, while Clara's mouth snapped shut, her composure slipping for the first time. "What?" Derek managed to choke out, his arrogance deflating like a pierced balloon. "You heard me. $70,000. Every month. Seems living well is the best revenge. After all," I said, my voice laced with a satisfaction I couldn't hide. Derek recovered first, his laughter forced. "Meredith, always the dreamer. Come on, Clara, let's leave the poor woman to her fantasies." But Clara didn't move, her eyes locked on mine, searching for the lie she hoped to find. Instead, I handed her my business card, the title Founder and CEO printed boldly next to my name. "In case you want to book a class, though I doubt you can cook," I quipped, a jab I knew would hit home. They turned away, their departure less triumphant, and more a retreat. I watched them go, a sense of victory washing over me. It wasn't just about the money or the success. It was about proving to myself that I could rise above Derek's belittlement, above the years of being made to feel inadequate. As they disappeared into the crowd, I took a deep breath, ready to face the day's challenges. The confrontation had been unexpected, but it reinforced a truth I'd come to live by. I was no longer the woman Derek had left behind. I was Meredith Lane, and my journey was only just beginning. The courthouse doors closed with a thud behind me, the sound a symbolic end to one chapter of my life and the beginning of another. I was ready for whatever came next, armed with the knowledge that I had overcome the worst and come out stronger on the other side. As I walked out into the sunlight, the courthouse and its fluorescent lights a fading memory, I couldn't help but smile. Derek and Clara could keep their mockery and disdain. I had something far more valuable, my self-respect and a thriving business that was all mine. The road hadn't been easy, but as I looked ahead to the future, I knew that the toughest battles were behind me. I was Meredith Lane, and I was unstoppable. The day Derek and I got married was supposed to be one of the happiest days of my life. Instead, it felt like an agreement between two business partners rather than a union of love. Our wedding, a small and modest affair, was more about appeasing our families and conforming to societal expectations than celebrating our love. "I guess this is it, huh?" Derek said, his voice devoid of emotion as we signed the marriage certificate in the cramped office of a local judge. The lack of warmth in his words stung, but I brushed it off as nerves. "Yeah, this is it," I replied, forcing a smile. "We're doing the right thing, right?" Derek shrugged, a gesture that spoke volumes. "Sure, everyone expects it. Besides, it's not like we have many options." Our conversation was interrupted by the judge's arrival, a man who seemed more interested in getting through the paperwork than witnessing the union of two souls. The ceremony was brief, and the exchange of vows felt hollow. There was no talk of love or forever, just the mechanical recitation of words that bound us legally but not emotionally. After the ceremony, as we faced our families, Derek's mother cornered me with a glass of cheap champagne in her hand. "You'll quit your job now, won't you? Derek will provide for you. It's a wife's duty to support her husband at home." The expectation was clear, and the pressure to conform was suffocating. I haven't decided yet," I stammered, taken aback by her bluntness. Derek overheard the conversation and joined in, his arms slipping around my waist possessively. "Of course she will. It's for the best." His words felt like a betrayal. We had discussed this before, and he had always said he supported my career. Yet here he was, echoing his mother's archaic beliefs as if they were his own. The ride home was silent, the air thick with unspoken tension. As soon as we arrived, Derek turned to me, his expression hard. "We need to talk about your job. It's time you started thinking about us, about a family." I felt a surge of anger. "We've talked about this. My job is important to me. We agreed I would continue working." Derek scoffed, his disdain palpable. "That was before. Things are different now. We're married. You need to start acting like a wife." The word wife felt like a chain, a weight designed to hold me down and define me by my relationship to him rather than my achievements. "Being your wife doesn't mean giving up who I am," I shot back, my voice rising. Derek's response was cold and calculated, designed to wound. "Fine, be stubborn, but don't come crying to me when you realize you've made a mistake." That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling and wondering if I had indeed made a mistake. The man lying next to me felt like a stranger, his expectations and demands a cage I had willingly walked into. The realization was bitter, a pill too large to swallow. I had married a man who saw me not as an equal partner but as an accessory to his life, someone to mold and shape into his idea of a perfect wife. The irony was not lost on me. In my attempt to fulfill my perceived duties, I had lost sight of my own identity. It was a harsh lesson, one that marked the beginning of a long and arduous journey. But it was also the first step towards the realization that I deserved more, that I was more. And it was this realization that would eventually lead me to reclaim my life, my independence, and my self-worth. But at that moment, all I felt was a profound sense of loss. For the dreams I had sacrificed at the altar of marriage, and for the woman I had allowed myself to become. The years that followed our wedding were a blur of unmet expectations and growing resentment. Derek's true colors revealed themselves gradually, like a slow poison that I unwittingly ingested daily. Our home became a battleground, with every conversation turning into a conflict over my role as his wife and my suppressed desires for personal fulfillment. One evening, as we sat across from each other at our modest dining table, the silence between us a stark contrast to the noisy clatter of our cheap cutlery, Derek broached the subject I had been dreading. "When are we going to talk about you quitting your job? It's time you focused on starting a family," Derek said, his tone casual, as if he were discussing the weather. I put down my fork, my appetite lost. "Derek, we've been over this. Why can't you understand that my career is important to me?" He laughed, a sound that was both dismissive and derisive. "Important? Meredith, be realistic. You're a woman. Your place is at home, taking care of your husband and children, not in an office." I felt my cheeks flush with anger. "My place is wherever I choose it to be. Why can't you support me the way I've supported you?" Derek's face hardened. "Because you're my wife, not some independent woman who can do as she pleases. I didn't marry you so you could abandon your duties for some job." The word duties felt like a slap in the face. "So my only value to you is a housewife? Is that it?" He shrugged, as if the answer was obvious. "It's not just me, Meredith. Society expects it. My mother expects it. I expect it." I stood up, pushing my chair back with a screech. "Well, maybe your expectations are the problem, not me." Derek stood as well, his height towering over me, his voice rising. "You're being selfish, Meredith. It's not just about what you want. What about what I want? What about what's best for us?" "Us," I echoed, incredulous. "There is no us, Derek. There's just you and your archaic beliefs. I won't be trapped by them any longer." The argument spiraled from there, each word we exchanged sharper and more hurtful than the last. It ended with Derek storming out of the house, slamming the door behind him, leaving me alone with my thoughts and a growing realization that our marriage was a sham, built on expectations I could never fulfill. That night, as I lay in bed, the silence of the house a stark reminder of the distance between Derek and me, I made a decision. I wouldn't quit my job. I wouldn't bend to his will. I was Meredith Lane, and I deserved to pursue my dreams, regardless of Derek's or anyone else's expectations. The following weeks were tense, with Derek and I circling each other like adversaries, speaking only when necessary. But I stood my ground, continuing to work, despite the icy atmosphere at home. It wasn't long before the situation reached a boiling point. Derek had been fired from his job for reasons he refused to discuss, and the financial strain on our already fragile marriage became unbearable. "Meredith, we need to talk," Derek said one evening, his voice devoid of its usual arrogance. "I lost my job. We're going to have to tighten our belts for a while." I looked at him, seeing not the confident man I had married, but a defeated shadow of himself. "I can help. I'll look for more work. Maybe I can take on extra hours." For a moment I thought I saw gratitude in his eyes, but it was quickly replaced by the familiar stubbornness. "No, I'll handle it. You just focus on quitting your job like you're supposed to." It was the final straw. "No, Derek, I won't quit. My job is the only thing keeping us afloat right now. If you can't see that, then maybe." "Maybe what?" he interrupted, his voice rising. "You'll leave? Go ahead. See if I care." The challenge hung between us, heavy and undeniable. In that moment, I realized that leaving wasn't just an option, it was the only way forward. Derek's refusal to accept me as I was, his disdain for my ambitions, had eroded any love I once felt for him. Our marriage was nothing more than a prison, and I was determined to break free. But freedom, I would soon learn, came at a cost. The road ahead would be fraught with challenges and heartbreak. Yet, as I faced Derek, my resolve hardened. I would no longer be the woman he wanted me to be. I would be the woman I needed to be, for myself and for the future I still dared to dream of. The decision to start my cooking class from home was born out of desperation and defiance. After months of fruitless job searching and enduring Derek's increasingly contemptuous remarks, I needed an escape, a way to prove not just to Derek but to myself that I was capable of more. "I'm starting a cooking class," I announced one evening, the words tumbling out before I could second-guess myself. Derek looked up from his newspaper, his expression a mix of amusement and disbelief. "A cooking class?" he echoed, the sneer in his voice unmistakable. "And who, pray tell, would pay to learn cooking from you?" I bristled at his tone, but kept my voice steady. "You'd be surprised. There's a market for home-cooked meals and people willing to learn." Derek laughed, a sound that sent a shiver of anger down my spine. "Meredith, be serious. You're a mediocre cook at best. This is just another one of your little projects that'll go nowhere." His words stung, but I refused to let him see how deeply they cut. "Well, we'll just have to see, won't we? I'm starting the classes next week, with or without your support." The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity. I converted our small dining room into a makeshift classroom, scrounging together enough chairs and tables from thrift stores and garage sales. I printed flyers and posted them around the neighborhood, advertised on social media, and waited anxiously for calls or messages that never came. Derek watched my efforts with a mix of indifference and mockery. "How many students have you roped into this farce?" he'd ask, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "None yet," I'd reply, fighting to keep the disappointment from my voice. "But they'll come." And eventually they did. My first student was a young mother from a few streets over, eager to learn how to cook healthy meals for her family. She was followed by a retired man looking to occupy his time, and a college student tired of fast food. They were few, but they were a start. The classes were a success. My students were engaged, asking questions, laughing at their mistakes, and reveling in their successes. For a few hours each week, our home was filled with the warmth and joy of shared endeavor, a stark contrast to the coldness that had settled between Derek and me. Yet Derek remained unimpressed. "A few hobbyists don't make a business, Meredith. When are you going to give up this charade and admit I was right?" I wiped my hands on my apron, facing him with a calm I didn't feel. "This charade, as you call it, is the best thing I've done in years. I'm not giving up on it, Derek. Not now. Not ever." His response was a derisive snort. "We'll see how long that lasts when you're still scraping by, trying to make ends meet. This cooking class of yours is nothing but a pipe dream." But it wasn't a pipe dream. With each class, I grew more confident, more skilled. Word of mouth began to spread, and slowly my schedule filled with students. I started a blog to share recipes and cooking tips, which attracted even more attention. Derek watched my growing success with a mixture of resentment and disbelief. The more the classes thrived, the more our marriage withered. We were two strangers living under the same roof, connected only by our shared disdain and the remnants of a relationship long dead. It was during one of my classes, laughter and the scent of fresh herbs filling the air, that I realized I had outgrown the life I had with Derek. My cooking class, once a desperate attempt to assert my independence, had become my lifeline, a way to rediscover my passion, my confidence, and my self-worth. As I watched my students savor the dishes they had created, I knew that no matter what Derek said or did, he could no longer hurt me. I had found something that was mine alone, something he could never take away. The realization was liberating, a release from the years of oppression and self-doubt. Derek could keep his scorn and his insults. I had my cooking class, my students, and a future filled with possibilities, and as I looked ahead to that future, I knew that the best revenge wasn't proving Derek wrong, it was proving to myself that I was right. I was Meredith Lane, and I was finally, truly free. The unraveling of my marriage to Derek reached its climax on a day that started like any other. The tension in our home had become the norm, a silent war waged with cold glances and minimal words. Yet beneath the surface a storm was brewing, a storm that would wash away the last remnants of our union. It was Lily, our sweet and observant daughter, who unwittingly lit the fuse. "Mom, I saw Dad in the park today," she said innocently as she set her school bag down. "He was with someone." Her words stopped me in my tracks, a pot of pasta forgotten on the stove. "With someone?" I echoed, my heart starting to race. Lily nodded, her brow furrowed in confusion. "Yeah, a woman. They looked really close. Is Dad working on a new project or something?" 1,000 thoughts raced through my mind, each more unsettling than the last. Derek's late nights, his guarded behavior with his phone, the gradual distancing, it all clicked into place, forming a picture I had refused to see. "No, Lily, not a project," I said softly, the weight of realization pressing down on me. That evening, I confronted Derek, armed with the innocence of Lily's observation and the strength of my newfound resolve. "Who is she, Derek?" I demanded, the evidence of his betrayal heavy in my heart. Derek's reaction was a cocktail of emotions, surprise, guilt, and then anger. "What are you talking about, Meredith?" he spat, his composure slipping. "The woman you've been seeing. Our daughter saw you," I pressed, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. For a moment Derek wavered, the facade of the devoted husband crumbling before my eyes. Then defiance replaced guilt. "So what if I have? It's not like you've been a wife to me in any real sense." His words were a slap, his betrayal a wound that cut deep. "A wife to you? Is that what you call someone you demean and belittle at every turn?" I retorted, my own anger rising. Derek laughed, a cold, harsh sound. "Please, Meredith, you've been nothing but a nuisance, a thorn in my side. I should have left years ago." "And yet, here you are," I shot back, my resolve hardening. "You know what, Derek? I want a divorce." The word hung between us, a declaration of war and liberation all at once. Derek's face went through a gamut of emotions, shock, disbelief, and then a cruel smile. "A divorce, huh? Fine, but don't think you'll walk away from this with anything. I'll make sure you're left with nothing," he threatened, his voice laced with venom. "I don't want your money, Derek. I want my freedom, and I'll have it, with or without your consent," I declared, the chains of our toxic marriage finally breaking. The days that followed were a blur of legal documents and tense exchanges. Derek fought the divorce with a ferocity that was both vindictive and pathetic, but I stood my ground, bolstered by the support of friends and the small but thriving community I had built around my cooking classes. In the end, the divorce was granted, a bitter victory that left me both relieved and exhausted. Derek's parting words were a promise of revenge, a vow to see me fail without him. But as I watched him leave our home for the last time, a sense of peace settled over me. I had survived Derek's contempt, his betrayal, and his attempts to diminish me. I was free to build a life that was mine alone, free to pursue my dreams without the weight of his expectations dragging me down. As I turned to face the future, I knew the road ahead would be challenging, but for the first time in years, I felt truly alive, ready to face whatever came with courage and a heart full of hope. Derek had underestimated me, as had many before him, but I was Meredith Lane, and I was just getting started. The aftermath of the divorce was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. I poured my energy into my cooking classes, transforming my small venture into a beacon of success that drew attention far beyond our local community. As my reputation grew, so did my business, blossoming into a thriving enterprise that became my source of strength and independence. It was during this period of growth that Derek made his inevitable return, not with an olive branch, but with envy and resentment in his heart. He came under the guise of picking up some of his remaining belongings, but his true motive quickly became apparent. "Meredith, I see your little hobby has turned into something more," he said, his voice dripping with disdain as he glanced around the now professionally equipped kitchen where I held my classes. "It's more than a hobby, Derek. It's a successful business," I corrected him, refusing to let his belittlement affect me. He scoffed, running his finger along the countertop as if searching for dust. "A business? Please, it's just cooking. Don't fool yourself into thinking you're some kind of entrepreneur." The old me might have crumbled under his scorn, but I had grown too much to let his words cut me. "Well, this just cooking has provided me and Lily with a comfortable life, one that doesn't include you." Derek's eyes narrowed, a flash of anger crossing his features before he regained his composure. "Don't get too comfortable, Meredith. We both know you're nothing without me. This success, it's just a fluke." I smiled, not out of amusement, but out of pity. "I'm doing just fine without you, Derek. Better than fine, actually. And as for being nothing without you, I think I've proven that's not the case." His jaw clenched, and for a moment I thought he might lash out. But instead, he turned away, his pride wounded. "You'll see, Meredith. You and your little cooking class will come crashing down, and when it does, don't expect me to be there to pick up the pieces." But the fall Derek predicted never came. Instead, my business flourished, growing in ways I had never imagined. My blog became a popular resource for home cooks, and my classes were booked months in advance. I even started a YouTube channel, sharing my recipes and cooking techniques with an ever-growing audience. The pinnacle of my success came when I was approached by a local publisher interested in turning my blog into a cookbook. The offer was more than I had ever hoped for, a chance to share my love of cooking with the world. As I signed the contract, I couldn't help but think back to Derek's parting words, his prediction of my failure. I had not only survived without him, I had thrived, building a life that was entirely my own. The day the first copy of my cookbook arrived was one of quiet triumph. Holding the book in my hands, I felt a surge of pride for all I had accomplished. It was more than just a collection of recipes. It was a testament to my journey, my resilience, and my refusal to be defined by someone else's expectations. Word of the cookbook's success reached Derek, as I knew it would. But by then, his opinions no longer mattered. I had proven him wrong, not out of spite, but out of a desire to reclaim my life and my identity. The road to success had not been easy. There had been days of doubt and moments of fear, but as I stood in my kitchen, surrounded by the fruits of my labor, I knew that every challenge had been worth it. I was Meredith Lane, a successful businesswoman, a beloved cooking instructor, and now a published author. Derek's attempts to belittle me, to keep me in the shadow of his contempt, had only served to fuel my determination. As I looked to the future, I did so with a sense of hope and excitement. There were more recipes to create, more classes to teach, and more dreams to pursue. Derek had become a distant memory, a reminder of a life I had outgrown. I had risen from the ashes of our failed marriage, and in doing so, I had found not just success, but a deeper sense of self-worth and fulfillment. The best revenge, I realized, wasn't proving Derek wrong. It was living my best life on my terms, and that was exactly what I intended to do. The culmination of my journey wasn't marked by grand gestures or dramatic confrontations, but by the quiet satisfaction of personal triumph. My cookbook was not only a bestseller, but also a catalyst for change in the lives of those who read it. It was a symbol of what could be achieved with determination, passion, and a refusal to be defined by others. Yet, the true testament to my success came unexpectedly, on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. Derek appeared at my doorstep, a sight I hadn't expected or wanted to see again. His presence was a stark contrast to the life I had built, a reminder of a past I had long since moved beyond. "Meredith, I need to talk to you," Derek stammered, his usual confidence nowhere to be seen. He looked diminished, his eyes avoiding mine. I hesitated, the memories of our past battles flashing before my eyes. "What is it, Derek? What could you possibly have to say to me now?" It's about the cookbook, he began, his voice faltering. I've seen what you've accomplished, and I was wrong. The admission took me by surprise. Derek, the man who had once told me I would amount to nothing without him, was standing on my doorstep admitting his mistake. I'm sorry, Meredith. Truly, I am. I never should have doubted you, he continued, his eyes finally meeting mine. You've done something incredible, and I just wanted to say that I'm sorry for everything. The apology, sincere as it might have been, didn't erase the years of pain and struggle. But standing there, looking at the man I had once loved, I realized I no longer harbored any resentment. His words couldn't change the past, but they offered a closure I hadn't realized I needed. Thank you, Derek, I said, my voice steady. Your apology means more than you know. But I've moved on. I've built a life that I'm proud of, one that's mine and mine alone. Derek nodded, a look of understanding crossing his face. I can see that, and I'm happy for you, Meredith. I truly am. As he turned to leave, a sense of peace settled over me. Derek's apology had closed the final chapter of our shared history, allowing me to look to the future with an even lighter heart. In the years that followed, my business continued to grow, branching into new ventures and reaching new heights. My story, once marked by struggle and defiance, had become one of inspiration, a reminder that it's never too late to change the course of your life. Lily, now a young woman with dreams of her own, looked to me not just as her mother, but as a role model. Mom, you're amazing, she'd say, her eyes bright with admiration. You've shown me that anything is possible if you believe in yourself. Her words were the greatest reward, a sign that my journey had not just transformed my life, but had also paved the way for her to chase her own dreams without fear or hesitation. As I sat down to write my next cookbook, I reflected on the path that had led me to this moment. The pain, the struggle, and the triumph, it had all been part of a journey that had made me who I was. I was Meredith Lane, a woman who had faced her fears, fought for her dreams, and emerged victorious. My story was a testament to the power of resilience, a message of hope to anyone who had ever been told they weren't enough. In the end, the best revenge wasn't about proving my doubters wrong. It was about proving to myself that I was capable of overcoming any obstacle, that I could build a life filled with joy, success, and fulfillment. And as I wrote the first words of my new cookbook, I knew that this was just the beginning. There were more stories to tell, more dreams to pursue, and a future that was mine for the taking. The end of my marriage to Derek had been the start of a new chapter, one filled with possibilities and promise. I had not just survived, I had thrived. And in doing so, I had found not just success, but a deeper, more profound happiness. This was not the end of my story, but the start of a new adventure, one that I embraced with open arms and a heart full of gratitude. The road ahead was unwritten, a blank page waiting to be filled with the next chapter of my life, a life that was truly, wonderfully mine.